Good morning. It is Thursday, October 28th, and this is the work session of the Board of Supervisors on the American Rescue Plan Act. First on our agenda were just some updates from a previous meeting. I did want to make a note that NACO did hold a meeting, because I referenced this on Tuesday regarding, or Monday, whenever the last time that we met. Was having a webinar that I sat in on Tuesday, because I missed the Monday one. They had quite a bit of data, and I need to actually go back and listen to that again of information they said. The final rules, they are not anticipating until the end of this year or early next year. I know that our national organization has submitted over 1,600 questions to the U.S. Treasury that have not been answered yet. And with the Senate file or 3011 that we give it's the long name, it's called the Flexibility Act. There were some date change provisions in there, and I believe it was mainly for, if it was used for like road construction or bridge construction, was where they're changing some of the dates. They did also state that if you're giving money to any of the, like a third party, that they have to meet all the same criteria as like we would be using as a county. If we were doing just our own county projects, we need to make sure that they meet that same criteria as well. So again, there was so much information. I want to listen to it again, so it's just almost too hard to take all my notes in regards to that. Lisa Markley and I did have the ISAC meeting then the next day on Wednesday. I tried to go over some of that, but there are a lot of questions from the group there that they were going to take back and try to get some additional answers on. One of them being, and this is at the NACO one, that was brought up in regards to construction. At the NACO meeting, they said construction things have to be tied back to COVID, COVID and the operations. And so we were seeking clarification what that actually meant when you're saying the operations of it. So could you actually construct a new building different from like wastewater, sewer, anything else, when it said it had to be tied to operations? And it was just, it was a little unclear. Yeah, it was just a little unclear. Because at one point they said, yep, we can still do these construction, but then I said, well, they referenced it had to be tied to operational. Sandra, you heard that too. Yeah, so we weren't quite clear what that.
So they're opening it up to infrastructure other than water and sewer and broadband.
Well,
that passed through the Senate. It hasn't passed through, and that's what I was asking.
That's what you were asking Dykstra about.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and that's where it is unclear. Again, that is not passed. It is now in the House, and it has a new House number.
So that's
Of the
about
US
this
Congress.
money.
Yep, it's still this money.
They're Treasury's trying to get final rules and Congress is still amending the law.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Because part of that amendment is that of the dollars you receive, the entities receive, so without revenue loss, there was no ability for us to spend those dollars where we see fit, okay? We have no revenue loss, so we were not able to just to do that. This amendment is saying, if you get more than
$10 million.
10 million, you can spend up to 10 million at your discretion. So our 18 million that we're gonna get at this point in time, we don't even know if there will be any of it available for us to discretionarily spend without having to meet all the criteria,
Yeah.
or if the 18 million is gonna have to meet all the criteria.
And specifically mentioned in there is roads and bridges.
Right,
So, I
right.
mean, there's a potential that there could be money for roads and bridges. But I mean, that's no small amount. So
No.
it would be nice if we could get some final parameters that we're working within so that we can figure out how best.
So if that passes, we could spend over half of it on infrastructure that wasn't previously in legislation
Yes, up to 10 million.
or
Correct.
anything.
Yeah, because the original legislation, the only infrastructure in that original,
Water, wastewater, and broadband.
yes, that was all the infrastructure there was, so that was,
Yes,
that's where Lisa and I were really like, so where is infrastructure for other things? Where is building other things? Can we fit it in? And there are so many questions that we're not sure where it fits in.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
Progress, yes.
So it was awesome that we took applications and said, here's what the needs are, but I don't know how the final rules are gonna fall in.
Right, but as of right now, they do say that we would not be penalized if you approve things under the current
Right.
interim final rule.
Right,
So,
Right.
so we're not
Yeah.
being held up by any means because we're still waiting for those final
Right.
rules. We can fall within the parameters of the interim.
Right, my only concern is that if it does pass, then, how's that gonna impact where we need to direct some of the funds? Like,
Well, I took it for me, and I just briefly looked, at the summary of applications. I think it gave a little bit more clarity if it opens up for broader construction based on some of the things that were being submitted to look at. And so because it was just kind of unclear, in my opinion,
mhm.
previously. So I think that part is good.
Oh, I think it's good.
Yeah.
I just, like, let's get it through, you
I
guys.
know. So that's the update
Yeah.
that I wanted to provide. And we have another tentative ISAC meeting, December 8th. So hopefully we'll have even more information at that particular time. Unless there's anything else, we could go on to discussion of the matrix draft.
I had some questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Can we just take each one
Sure,
item by item?
Sure, yep.
Under general, number 1, what does the word disparities mean in this context? And the reason I ask is because we're talking about vulnerable populations in item 2. And I just didn't know what disparities meant and how, if there might be overlap there. I guess I need a definition of the word that's used here.
did you just pull these out of the
Interim final rules.
expenditure categories? Yeah. interim fire, okay.
Hmm,
So I don't know, ask the federal government what that means,
Okay,
or the US Treasury. No.
well, you're the folks that are gonna be scoring it, and I just wanna make sure, I'm saying, is there overlap in that?
When I read that as groups that were disproportionately affected by COVID-19.
That's kind of what I thought. And then the second item is low income seniors, handicapped, unemployed, or other underserved residents. Okay,
But that's
You don't see
not
that as
an
overlap.
umbrella for all of the possible
Disparities.
disparities.
Okay.
So are you saying, is there overlap, meaning can these two be combined, or is it overlap within that sentence?
I just thought for scoring purposes, was that overlap? That's what I was asking. And it's true that there could be other things that other groups, majority of impact or investment is in disadvantaged communities, businesses, or disparities caused by COVID-19. I think they kind of overlap. But I guess I just thought, maybe I should just ask, I was just looking for things where I thought it might be difficult to score. And I think that could be those two.
How do you want to read it, either overlap?
I'm not sure.
I kind of read it in looking at it, that it looks at kind of the broader question, and then the next question, it kind of narrows that down just a little bit.
Is that their language? It's majority of impact or investment is in disadvantaged communities. I can understand that. Is in businesses or is in disparities. I think the term just. Yeah, it's written awkwardly too. I don't know.
Maybe, or addresses disparities
Yes.
caused by.
Yes, that would do it. Thank you.
Majority of impact or investment is in disadvantaged communities, businesses, or addresses disparities.
Yeah, there's probably going to be some overlap, but this is a little more grammatical. Because I guess the second one does not. The second one does not really talk about impacts caused by COVID-19. It just says growing populations, and if that's what we got out of the guidance.
And maybe we should say, or addresses other disparities, because are we saying majority of impact or investment is in disadvantaged communities impacted by COVID, businesses impacted by COVID, or are we just saying disadvantaged communities, businesses, and separately disparities caused by COVID?
You have to relate it back to the first sentence because it all starts with impacted by the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm fine.
There's a, am I reading this right? The second to last line is the same as the line right above it.
Oh, yeah.
There's a duplication.
The
It's
project
been
hasn't-
fixed.
Oh, it has.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what
I'm
I'm
looking at an
saying.
old
The
one.
one that's on the agenda has been fixed. Linda pointed that out to me.
Oh, I apologize.
Copy and paste, and it did not affect the points.
So,
It's
so
okay.
what is it to?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Oh,
It
just
was
take,
duplicate.
it's just duplicate, okay, you recognize that it is duplicate.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I had on the fourth one starts history of service in Story County. Applicants have been operationally viable, have a history of commitment to Story County with proven record of accomplishment. Just to know that we're mixing cities in here, which have been around for 100 years, with public agencies that may not have been around very long. And I wondered if there's any kind of scoring issue there. I don't know how you're gonna score that, but cities automatically get a 10. I guess. what I'm-
Yeah, I get what you're saying there, yeah.
But cities have an advantage over their agencies, and should they? I don't know. I'm just saying.
I think, I didn't know that would you want that necessarily, or would you just want the viability of the proposal? I mean, you want viability of the agency, but also the proposal. I'm not sure on that question.
I think that could be taken out. Maybe what you're looking at is maybe it's applicants have a proven record of accomplishment.
They could also bump out some applicants that, and I don't know that that's the intent that you want to do either.
So then what you want to say is applicant has the ability to carry out the proposal. That's what we're getting at.
Right.
Does that work? People who are going to do the scoring, is that okay with you? Does that make sense?
Like the ability to carry out the proposal.
Has the ability to carry out the proposal.
I'm just trying to think, can you,
And proven record of accomplishment. How about applicants are operationally viable and have a proven record of accomplishment?
I'm fine with that.
because the question is, you're potentially cutting out some, and you may be inadvertently cutting out some entities that have applied for funds.
I see what you're saying. I'm just trying to get that.
Well, I'm thinking
through.
if you're saying that say your question again.
Applicants are operationally viable and have a proven record of accomplishment. So basically, do they have references? Have they done similar projects? It wouldn't have to be in Story County, but do they have, can they show that this is not just some,
I'm trying to think how we could word that even a little bit better.
Mhm.
Maybe if you go on to another one, I can come back to that if I'm thinking on that.
of using evidence-based practices?
The entity, and I'm just trying to think, there's a particular threshold when you use the term evidence-based practices, at least from the education standpoint, when I start thinking, when I think of evidence-based practices. So what is the evidence-based practice that you're referring
like
back to?
It's yeah, so like outside of education, if we're talking about a homelessness prevention program, there are evidence-based programs or programs that use evidence-based practices to address whatever that issue might be that they're trying to address.
I wouldn't want to preclude people from coming up with a new and innovative
Yeah.
idea.
Right.
And that's, and I believe in evidence-based practices whenever possible. But I think sometimes there can just be a problem that, there's still innovation. We don't know everything.
Yeah, I think
That's the thing to me. I
I
think
think
we're
we're trying
trying
to get to the root of what this line was trying to address, which is basically,
you have the
ensuring
ability to
that this-
carry it out.
yes,
Right.
and has some
Applicant-
experience.
Applicant has shown the ability to carry out the proposal.
Either shown or they have the ability.
Has the
I mean, their application is going to show whether they, how that's written, and if we have any additional questions, we follow up to find out, do they have the ability?
But how we know that is history. How we know that is their history. What they've done. And a proven record of accomplishment is.
You want to move on?
Yeah, let's come back to that one. I kind of start that one.
The contract is going to have to address some of that too, and restrictions. You lay out more clearly how that money should be paid back, but it should be paid back. Project is really going to go. Expect it to. Somebody will have to.
That's a good point. But we still want to make sure that we're assessing that their abilities while we're making, in terms of before we're granting as well. The next one is the project is transformative, making a permanent and noticeable change in in a service or community condition. Does transformative mean different, or does it? What if you were bringing something up to like new condition? That's not necessarily transformative. And maybe I'm thinking an example and not that just because it's one of the things that's allowed is waste, let's say water treatment. Let's say somebody's fixing their water system to bring it back like new, like it was. It's 100% effective like new. Is that transformative? Probably not.
So would you just say the project makes,
Could do that. You just say the project makes a permanent noticeable change in a service or community condition. Yeah. Is that, I mean, if you've made a noticeable change in the condition and service, if you've improved it back to where it was when you first
Right.
installed it, whatever.
Right.
And transformative to me just kind of, I don't know what it added to me. The next one, the project leverages other funding sources. I'm not sure how I feel about whether that makes a project better or not. I'm thinking maybe there's somebody that's got a project out there that they're funding 90% and they're asking us for the last 10%. So they don't have to fund any of it themselves. I don't know that that necessarily, in my mind, would put a project way above another project. Because different kind of projects have different kind of funding levels out there that they can access. You know, some places can bond, some places can borrow, some places can't. So I don't know what that, I don't know what that tells me about the need.
I think it goes back to, that was one of the questions I think we had in the application, if they had other funding sources.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes back to that one. And I also look at, I guess, my understanding from our last conversation too, is the matrix here is really more of a guide. People, you know, entities, they may not score the whole points or whatever because of what else is more the depth in their application that's not necessarily reflected on here, but this is to give us
Yeah, and I think,
some sort of guidance as to,
you know, I thought we were asking if we had other funding sources for our own information. I don't think that was necessarily a positive or a negative in terms of should we consider funding. That's my point.
So I hear Lisa's question as, is this what is the scoring matrix what you're gonna base your decision on completely? Because
No,
all
but I
this-
think we should know why we got something on it.
whatever,
what else were you gonna say?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, I guess I'm, my assumption was that the scoring matrix was to, give an overview, see how it rated. Not gonna, we're not, I don't think you're gonna say, if it scored this amount of money out, it's out, or if it scored this amount, it's in. I don't think that's how you're looking at this. I think this is just a help and a guide. That's my,
Right,
Yes, I just don't think that, I guess my thought was, I didn't think we asked that because we thought of one application we'd want to look at more favorably than another one just because they had another funding source.
So maybe we just remove the point from there and just have a yes, no.
Or we go look at the application. Yeah, I just don't think we should be giving, I just don't think giving points on it makes a lot of sense.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
a complete application was submitted on time. Does that mean that we are accepting late applications?
We may have gotten some that came after the deadline, and that's why, would be my assumption, is if you receive some after the deadline, the question is, are you going to review them?
Well,
Or not.
here's what our thought process was. If you submitted them on time, you get 5 points. If you didn't submit on time, we're not throwing you out, but you know what I'm saying?
Well, and complete is underlined there, so
Right,
you're not piecemealing it back to us.
Right. Right.
Is this a complete and organized submission? Did you give us everything we need to make our decision? Or are we getting bits and pieces?
If you have a deadline, and you tell everybody you have a deadline for applications, do people who got their applications in at time have a legitimate right if you're looking at applications that didn't come in on time?
Yeah, I mean, they very well, since you do have a deadline, I mean, you put a deadline out kind of for a reason.
Did you have a deadline?
We didn't, well, we had a deadline, yeah, but we didn't say
We had a time, a date,
That-
time.
that no applications will be accepted past this date. We had a date and a time.
We said
That was due by.
applications needed to be submitted by such and such a date at a time.
Right.
I mean, yeah,
I don't think you have to say anything more than there's a deadline. Yes, I don't know. I think we need to make a decision on whether we're
yeah, I mean,
we're accepting applications that came in after the deadline. And I don't know what we.
yeah, I mean, a lot of grant applications that you put out there, if there's a deadline, if you're late, oftentimes you're not considered. You're late. So. And we haven't said, whether we'd be doing like a second round or how we're doing all of this as of yet, or they may have another deadline, but that would be kind of my, yeah, I mean, that's just one initial thought out there. I mean, that's just how it's always been for any grant that I've written is you just kind of know there's a date and a deadline.
It doesn't get considered if it gets in late.
So do we keep that question? Or do we just keep it? Do we keep it as is because it would reflect that, yes, it came in? Right,
I don't think we'd be scoring it if it didn't come in on time.
time, so,
Am I missing something?
no, that's what I'm saying, or do we want to just take it out because we wouldn't be looking at it if it came in late?
I think we take it out. Because everybody would get the points, so why have it there?
Okay,
I think so.
okay, now we're down to the next category, support for public health response.
Under the third one, what does not funded elsewhere mean? By other, the CARES Act? Or by general funds? I just don't understand what that means. That's been interpreted.
That this is the only opportunity to fund that.
I'm sorry.
That this is the only, that this is potentially the only funding stream known of at this time to fund that.
Oh, okay.
That's how I took it.
Not able to be funded elsewhere?
not under those.
Well, with what Leanne just said, I think you said this was the only stream available, which means it's not able to be funded elsewhere. I don't know. I guess,
Yeah, no, I didn't quite read it that same way, Linda, but you're making me think that now as I'm reading, as we're talking on it. I get what you're saying. Addresses a need related.
I think not able to be funded elsewhere, I think able to be is implied.
Or not currently funded elsewhere.
That there's no other funding available for that. This
Just that
this
project.
specific project.
okay. That's
Yeah,
what we
it's saying it's implied, that's how I read it as.
Okay.
And the last one. The projected target population groups are at higher risk of being impacted by the pandemic. Okay, this probably is too much in the weeds. My comment is, even if what is being proposed does not mitigate COVID-19, projected target population groups are at higher risk of being impacted. So you get, if your projected population group is at higher risk of being impacted, never mind. I would have thought that. Because it's supporting the public health response, which means they have to be impacted.
Impacted, right.
by COVID-19.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's hard to keep thinking of going back to, they have to be impacted by
yes,
COVID.
yes, never mind. I was thinking, would you get 5 points if your projected target population was at higher risk of being impacted, but what you were proposing had nothing to do with mitigating COVID-19, but it has to support public health response. Never mind. Under the next category, the project aligns with existing projects and programs. I'm not sure if I understand what that means. I've got a clue.
I don't know if we need that one.
Unless there's something I'm not seeing, it's very kind of vague in general. I don't understand. I just don't understand it.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily want something that would be inconsistent with adopted plans or policies, right? Whether it be by Story County or even like the Emergency Management Commission and the PSF plans.
So that question to me sounds like it's more specific to internal, but it doesn't get to the broader external applications. And so how would you write that to, or maybe have another question, so, you know, does it align with our current, and maybe it's a yes or no versus a point one, you know, does it align with our current internal existing projects and programs? And then externally have another question, or figure out a way to phrase it so it's much broader and not just specific to
Can you think of
leaning
an
towards
example?
one
I'm
segment of
still struggling with
applications, which I don't think that's what we want to do.
We're talking negative economic impacts. So what
I'm
exists?
trying to think of something hypothetically that does not relate to the projects that were received. So, I mean. say a local service provider. I have to come back to you. I had to build it in my head. I'm trying to be very cognizant that
Yes.
I know the projects are there and
Right.
not address that.
That's totally appropriate. Maybe we could look at, one we've already approved, which was the job retraining, workforce retraining. Since we've already approved that, look at that. Is that project line with existing, I don't know what the projects and programs would be, but
Yeah.
does it not run afoul of something else that's going on in the community with the same goals, but run counter to it?
Yeah, I'm just,
And I guess that wasn't a good example either. I guess I can go with it. I just was kind of confused as if I were a reader, how I would use that.
yeah, but I'd be looking at what existing projects and programs. Are you looking at internal projects and programs or external projects and programs? And what, it's kind of broad. Maybe you want that broad, but it's just,
Could be kind of anything.
right.
On the other
And
hand-
is it a necessary question?
Yeah, let's just add that. Do you, without getting into any specifics, do you see it as a helpful question? Or is it just?
You see this? Yeah, I'd like your input up. What do you?
We're all speaking up.
Hmm?
We're all speaking up at once.
Yeah. Well, it could also be something that you relook at. If we're moving this to our agenda, potentially for our agenda Tuesday, there's no reason why we can't relook at how that's reworded and say, okay, we like it, yay, or we just say we're gonna amend it in there and take something out. We could certainly do that. Are we on to the other side then? Invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure.
Broadband, you've got the project targets last mile gaps. Are the middle mile things usually taken care of by contracts with other providers than?
I was trying to remember what our consultant was saying, this is one I wish we had that study
Wouldn't it be
finalized.
nice? Yeah, I have a lot of, yeah.
Just from some of the survey information we were hearing, that was yes, to answer your question, yes. But then I've heard some providers say that it's still that middle mile is a concern, but OCIO is targeting that too.
Well, the middle mile is a concern, because if you're up here and you got a project and you're out down here, but you have to get from here to there, and it's the carriers and leases kind of issue, using another carrier, correct? Another provider to get to that middle mile.
And this could be just broadened out, so just targets gaps in network connection.
That would be
do
to that, yeah.
Yeah, let's do that, and let's try to get a little more help from Jen Lowe or one of the other consultants on that issue. Thank you. Under evidence of sustainability, would there be another category that would get some points, which would be not needed because it's a one-time? I mean, you're given points if they have possible funding for a multi-year program or have funding for sure, but you're not given any points of, this is a one-time thing, it's not needed. So if you had a one-time and not needed, you wouldn't get any points in this category. Which might put a project that's a 20-year project ahead of a project that's a one-time project And I'm
Here's
not sure
it
that's what we
done.
want to do.
Yeah, so maybe add something.
Funding has been identified, or funding is not for multi-year program, or funding or sustainability funding is not needed. Yeah, I think there's.
Yeah.
When you have when you're using one-time money, I think it's an advantage to look at things that are one-time
Right.
expenses. And this would be at the disadvantage of something that was a one-time expense.
Right.
We're just talking about program sustainability. not funding sustainability. Isn't that- do you understand that? Is program, the sustainability of the program, not the funding,
Not the project.
and the project, the programmatic element.
Yeah, that it will be sustained in the long term.
Then I think that has to be clearly, because, yeah, because when you say evidence of sustainability and you reference funding, you're looking at program sustainability.
But what I'm saying is if you have a one-time program, a one-time cost, they, a one-time expenditure, they get 0 points.
Right.
If they're asking for something that's going to have to be sustained over a period of time, they get 5 or 10 if they can say they've got some funding. Why would we automatically give a multi-year project or an ongoing project points and not give anything to a one-time thing?
I see what you're saying, so you're trying to make sure that a one-time project that doesn't need sustainability funding is not held on.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So I'm suggesting 10 points if they don't need sustain or it's not needed.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So it would just be funding has not been identified for multi-year program sustainability, or sustainability funding is not.
Add it
Just
to
adding
the third
it,
one.
To the third.
Add it to the third one.
Okay.
So it gives 10 points.
Sustainability.
And then consistent with treasury guidelines. If it may not meet, and we're gonna have to make a final determination. But it should somehow, the way this looks, somebody could get the idea of, oh, I still scored really well, and they didn't throw me out, even though I didn't score any points on treasury guidelines, might assume that. I don't want to have somebody argue with us and say,
Oh, nobody picked up, that's not what this is about, though.
No,
it isn't.
No,
no.
Yeah,
I think this, go ahead, Latifa, what's your thoughts?
well, go ahead, Lisa.
go ahead.
I think this is important. If it clearly does not meet the guidelines, we can move that one off the pile. But I think there's so much ambiguity in
Sure.
the guidance that we have that I think this is helpful because it at least gives us an idea of where it is in possibility. And this is not up for discussion.
You know what we should do then? We should take the points off that, off that box of consistency with federal guidelines and put it on the bottom and not confuse it with the pointing, the
Sure,
points,
sure,
the granted points. I'd be comfortable with it that way.
Oh, yeah, put
Makes
it down to
sense.
where you can just kind of do a check off. of-
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, because there may be some where we're saying, oh, they may not, is we need to do another question to find out more. They might, but they may not.
Yeah.
How it is. So I think that would be a good idea.
I do too. And again, I just want to make sure we're being clear. This scoring matrix is not up for discussion outside of our own use,
Right.
helping us kind of work through all the many requests that we have that I anticipate we
Right.
may continue to get.
Oh, I agree with you 1,000%, but I know it will be.
And I'm just saying, I'm not gonna listen.
Well, I think one thing that I would like to see at the top here with the scoring matrix is maybe adding a line or something saying this is, this is a guide, that this is all inclusive for decision making.
Yes.
Just so that it is clear that this isn't the only thing that was scored and.
I think
do
that's a
that.
good
I mean, I
idea.
want
That's
to,
a very good idea. 'Cause we said that the last meeting, we said at this meeting, let's put it in writing.
yeah,
I think that's a really good idea.
Going back to the one we said we'd come back to. Which was the one that started history of service in Story County.
oh, yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. Didn't want us not to do that. What would you said applicant has been operationally viable, comma, has a proven record of accomplishment and has the ability to carry out proposal.
Say that again.
Applicant has been operationally viable, has a proven record of accomplishment and has the ability to carry out the proposal. Or it could be applicant has the ability to carry out the proposal shown by being operationally viable and having a proven record of accomplishment.
I like your first one better.
Okay.
First.
Sorry.
Applicant has been operationally viable, has a proven record of accomplishment and has shown the ability to carry out proposals.
I'm gonna read it one more time, just from my sake. Applicant has been operationally viable, has a proven record of accomplishment, and has shown the ability to carry out the proposal.
That's what I said. Let's see if anybody can make it better. Or
I think it's fine for now for me, because I'm such a visual person, trying to look and think at it, type it up and, having it on our agenda.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, there still may need some wordsmithing, 'cause I'm not sure it. Yeah, I'm just not sure on it, but I can't think of what I'm trying to think of too. Right, for that, so.
And so what we would like added to the top. We just want to say this is not an all-inclusive list.
I'm just saying that, or just saying that this is a guide.
This is for guidance
This is
only.
for guidance. Yeah,
the scoring matrix is for guidance only and is not a sole determinant of selection of a proposal.
Yeah.
right.
Not a sole determinant for selection or rejection of a proposal.
Staff is using this to make a recommendation to you.
Right.
And then the board makes its decision.
Right.
Using the information that it.
Right, yeah, right. So staff is using this to make a recommendation to us. But then we'll look through them all. Kind of with that input. Make some determinations.
That's good.
So I think then you've got some idea of how to replace that or whatever, and then we can review it again when it's on our agenda, and if there's any additional changes at that particular time, we can do. But I think it was helpful here to flesh out some of the other areas.
Thank you so much for doing this too. I know this was no small thing to put
Oh, yeah.
together.
All of you for putting it together.
It's Leanne, we just looked at it and said, yeah, this looks good.
So,
Thank you,
Thank
Leanne.
you, Leanne.
It wasn't really challenging. It was me just cutting and pasting.
well, thank you. So, moving on to next steps. So we do have some upcoming meetings. We've got those set that we put out so far for our calendars. I did bring in my packet, but
Got one. Well, we're gonna look at
we have a tentative one, I think. 4th,
at 10 a.m.
right, November 4th, yeah.
The 19th at 2:30.
And then the 29th and 30th.
30th. And what will we next? When we discussed looking at the internal applications first, is that going to be?
Did we discuss that? I took it as they were just in person to help with the kind of the staggering of the volume. Because we didn't know how many applications when they went out, if we'd be looking at 50 or 300 applications coming in. That's right, is when on our days, is what you're referring to. I'm sorry, I was thinking of when they're doing the matrix or whatever, right? So I think, right, the 19th, we're looking at the internal, and then the 29th and 30th were the external application.
And the 4th is just in case.
Just in case something comes up.
Right, and
That's,
we may still need, I mean, we have however many internal applications, and then the volume of external, we still may need an extra day with both of those to look through them all, but I know that staff needed time to look through all the applications as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So. Any other questions, and then we could go to public comment.
I gotta bug out, because I gotta eat so that I can go downstairs and help voters.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
All right, I just wanted to it's okay to go to public comment.
I'm fine with that.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
I am. fine
Okay.
with that.
All right, so we'll go on to public comment. If you're on Zoom and would like to make public comments, and you can unmute yourself, we could do that.
Laura says several in the chat, she just wants to talk to them. Talk through them, or-
Sure, yeah, so were we gonna read them?
I can if you want me to.
Yeah,
First one, this is Laura Olson. I have concerns about the items on the scoring matrix. General category, item 4, looks at the history of service in the county. Is this going to be based strictly on chronological time of existence? We addressed that. Yeah. Only one of the applicants' home allies clearly will not receive points for this on a strict chronological basis. That means you're locking out new grassroots efforts to meet urgent unmet needs. What constituents have proven record when you're considering government entities? Then general category, item 9, giving 5 points for complete application submitted on time. Why is this even needed? Both internal and external candidates had clear instructions on what was needed, what the deadline was. Are there applications on the list that did not comply? Where are they even considered? And then regarding shown accomplishments, again, cutting out the new grassroots efforts. And then most of us worked very hard to meet the requirements to meet the deadline. Why should others be allowed to get extra time than it's serious? We did say date and time. I think she meant other than a serious reason to be late. She clarified that. And then Loris again, regarding negative economic impacts, studies showed that people at the poverty level were more negatively impacted by the pandemic than those above.
Right, right, and Loris, I agree, so we took out that complete application on time. The number 4 question that you have, I think, I don't know if you can unmute, I think that's where kind of my comments is we need to look at that to make sure that it is not disqualifying other potential groups. So I'm not sure that we may still need to flesh out that wording a bit more. And I don't know if she can unmute herself.
I can, and thank you for that. I just thought it'd actually be a little clearer if I typed it instead. Okay, but anyway, so thank you. I did hear that.
Yep, yep. Are there any other public comments at this time? Okay, not hearing any, so we, as I said, we have a tentative date for November 4th, but we do have a hard date of November 19th for our next meeting. And I thank those that have joined in today. And if there's nothing else,
Move adjournment.
we can adjourn. All right, thank you.